Now, you're going to need to use 36 petals of the main color, and then I have 8 more of the inside color. I use 4 strips of 18-inch tape, which will make 36 2-inch petals. And then I have, this color is going to be my center, and I only want 8 of those, and so I only go up to the 16-inch line, and also cut those into 2-inch lengths of tape. Now, if you are doing this in my class, my duct tape class, I am advising you not to put all the strips on the mat at one time, because you probably won't finish this in one club meeting, which means that the rest of the tape will have to sit on here for a week. And what we have found is that when we do that, it's very hard to peel it back off. It really adheres down to the mat. So to avoid having that happen to you, work 1 strip at a time if you are in my duct tape club. And I'm going to do 1 strip at a time. So I've measured this out to the end of my mat, which is 18 inches, and I'm going to cut it off there. And then I'm going to cut on every 2-inch increment to make my 2-inch petals. Peel up one of the 2-inch strips and flip it over, sticky side up. Is I put my thumb, my left thumb, in about, it's probably about 1/2 inch is what it is. And then I take the opposite corner and bring it down, and what you want is a triangle within a triangle. You're making a triangle shaped piece right here, and then you have this triangle shaped, well, more of an L shape, sticky part left. And this is exactly what you want it to look like. You don't want it very much less sticky than this, and you don't want any more sticky than this. As I said before, this is exactly the amount of sticky that you want left. This is exactly the way you want your triangle to look. Here are some variations that I get from my new duct tapers that are really not suitable for using with a flower. They can look like this, where this side gets really super skinny down here. The bottom's not terrible, but this right here is not good, because the next thing we're going to do is put this over like this to stick down, and you haven't left very much for this to stick down and make it into a triangle shape. Another thing I see with my tapers is that they just go way too far down to the bottom, both on this side and too far over on this side. And again, there's not very much left for this to stick to down here. Plus, now you don't have very much right here to stick to the pen, because what you're going to end up doing with this petal is folding it up, folding it over like that to create a little kind of a house shape, is what many people call it. And then you're going to take that and wrap it around the pen. And you want that much sticky so that the petal stays securely in place. If you only have this much sticky after you've folded this part down, you'll notice that this doesn't want to stay down now, and this isn't going to be very secure on here either with this small amount of sticky. So neither one of these is appropriate. You want it to look like this. Let me fold another one since I folded that one over. You want it to look like this, with quite a bit of sticky. It's actually about 1/2 inch sticky on either side. And it looks like an L. That's another thing people point out. Okay? And so once you've made this part, folded this down to make the L, now you're going to take, I turn it 1/4 turn this way. So it was sitting like this. This is how I folded it with my finger, my thumb stuck here. Then I turn it 1/4 turn, again grab this edge, and this time I pay a lot of attention to this edge right here. I want this edge to line up with this edge over here, like that. And so even though this did not line up exactly with the L shape that was down there already, that's not a big deal. To me, it's more important that this part is lined up exactly. Once again, I put my left thumb on the left corner, my right hand takes that other right corner and brings it down to make a nice triangle shape. Turn it a quarter turn, bring this over, and line this edge up, and you end up with this kind of a house shape. Left thumb, right corner, over. Try to make this line as straight up and down as you can. You don't want to bring it so far over that you get this kind of a slanted line like that. Shouldn't look like that. Quarter turn, bring this other edge over. Make sure that that edge is lining up over here. And another little house shape. Alright, now we have 9 petals. We need to make 3 more of those 18-inch strips cut into 2-inch lengths, 1/16-inch length of the other color that is cut into 8 2-inch strips. Remember, if you're doing this in my duct tape class, only cut one 18-inch strip at a time, and then fold all the petals from that 18-inch strip and stick each one down somewhere above here on your extra part of your mat. Now we're going to take our pen and we need to cover the tip. And I generally cover the tip, so sometimes I cover it with some of the main color, sometimes I cover it with some of the middle color, or sometimes I take a third color altogether, and that's what I'm going to do this time. And all you really need is about a 1/2 inch of a piece of tape, and then you take, I like to use the straighter edge up on top, and you just want this to go above, you know, it's between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch is all, over the top of the pen. And then just wrap the rest of it around. And then what I do is I push in on one side, move over a little bit and push in a little more, and just kind of spiral it down all the way around, like that. And if you want to do it a different way, more neatly and tidily, that's fine. It isn't even absolutely necessary to do this because you don't really see much of the middle once your flower is created anyway. But just for the sake of having it nicely covered, I went ahead and did that. Okay, I'm using regular camo for my inner petals. So we're going to start with one of those, and we're going to lay the pen down just a smidge so that the tip is just a little bit onto the non-sticky pattern part of the petal. And you want it to be, you know, fairly and then you're just going to roll one side, and you don't want this to stick on here, so you have to do one side and then the other. And at this point you'll notice, so you have our first petal here, and I kind of play with it sometimes if it seems like it's kind of flattened or something, and you'll notice that the bottom pretty much stayed even all the way around. Okay, alright, so now to do this, to place the second petal, I want it to be directly across from this one, and the bottom, this part right here, needs to line up pretty much with the bottom of the first petal. It shouldn't be down lower, it shouldn't be up higher, it should be just right where it was, and then the tips should be right across from each other, as close as you can get it. It's kind of hard to see. So then you stick it down here when you think you have the tips where you want them, and then again you roll one side around and then the other side around. And now you'll notice that they're not quite straight across, and that's okay. In fact, that's good. We'll talk about that in a minute. Alright, so to place the third petal, now you've got these 2 gaps here, one on this side and one on this side. So that's where we're going to place our next two petals, is to fill in those 2 gaps. Again, the bottom needs to line right up with the bottom of the first petals, and then the tip should be right in between, as close to in the middle as you can get it. Alright, stick that down and then fold one side and then fold the other one around. And again, these are not staying flat anymore, they're kind of curling up at an angle. Okay, so now we're going to go to the opposite side, this side over here, and fill that gap in with another petal. And making sure that the bottom lines up down here and the tip is pretty much right in the middle of that gap. Stick it down in there and then roll these edges around one at a time. All right, now we have 4 gaps. We've got one here, one here, one here, and one here. Hopefully you can see that there are 4 gaps. So the remaining 4 petals have to go into those gaps. This is a little trickier because as you fill them in, you kind of have to watch and keep track and just make a quarter turn each time you go to the next petal, or you're going to lose track of which gaps you're filling in. So again, make sure that bottom is level with the other petals, and the middle is between the 2 tips that you've chosen, and then just wrap each side individually. Move over. This is the one I just did, so now I'm going to this gap. Okay, I just did this one, so now I want to do this gap right here. And the last gap is right here, so that's where my last one's going to go. And now you see we have kind of a little bud to work with, the inside part of the flower. Also, I want you to notice that, oops, these edges are starting to come way up at an angle here and cross over each other. And that's good. We don't want to try to force it to stay level all the way around. We always want where we put it down to be level, but the tips should you should just let them go up at an angle more and more as we go. Okay, and now we're ready to start the colored petals. And I don't really pay too much attention. I guess maybe I do pick a gap for the colored petal to go to, but it's just not a huge deal. So anyway, remember the bottom needs to match up with the bottom of where the regular camo was, and then you're going to do each side up like this, and you want to kind of encourage it to go even more of a slant each time that you do a petal, just a little bit more. Now there are various ways you can fill in these gaps, but this is how I do it. And I just like to be very symmetrical. So I'm just going to go a little bit over from the first tip. And if you measured that, you would see that it's almost a ½ an inch, surprisingly enough. ½ an inch from one tip to the other. You do not need to measure like that, but I just wanted you to know that's about how far I do it, because I think that sometimes it's kind of hard to tell distance on these videos. The size just isn't quite right. Alright, and so we're going to continue around. Remember to make sure that the bottom matches up with the bottom of the petal that's underneath it. And then as you put the sides down, or press them down, make sure that you're encouraging them to go up at an ever-increasing angle. And there is the main part of our flower pen. At this point, we want to add some what I call leaves down here, and really they're just mini petals. And you can again do a different color. You can you could go back to your inside color for those. I'm just going to go ahead and do the yellow again, like I did on the inside tip, which, as you can see, you really can't even see it in there. So, not sure how necessary that was. Alright, so now I cut a 2-inch piece of this yellow, and now I'm going to cut this into 4 squares. And I'm going to fold them the same way that I folded the petals, the bigger petals, which it's a little bit harder because it's smaller to work with, but hopefully you got enough practice with those big ones that this won't be too bad. But you're making the same little house shape. And you want your center triangle to go straight down so that you don't get, remember, so you don't get a slanted side like that. You want it to be the same distance all the way up. Alright, and once you have those 4 little miniature petals, take your flower pen again, and down at the bottom you want the sticky part, all this sticky tab, to go on the pen, and the point that isn't sticky will be resting up against the flower, sort of cradling it. And you press that down really firmly, and then turn it around to the exact opposite end and do the same thing with another one. And then fill in the 2 sides with the 2 remaining, so that you have 4 little leaf type things framing your flower, or cradling your flower. The first thing to do is, this is what I do. With the cap on, I take a marker and run a line around where the cap meets the pen, and then I remove the lid. And then you could cover this with 1 strip of color, and it's generally about 3 3/8 inches is what you want. 3 isn't enough, and 3.5 is too much, so you want 3 3/8, which is halfway between the quarter mark and the half mark. Okay, and then you would take this, and what I like to do is I line it up down here with the line that I drew, and then I also line this edge up with the writing on the pen, if there is any, so that it'll roll up straight, and then you just go around. That's why I don't cover the pen first before I make the flower, which is the way some people do it. I do it after. And so there you go. There is your pen. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.